A lot of people ask me, how in the world do I get these big name athletes to photograph? And I say I had to start out shooting no-name athletes, or people that maybe weren't as built or buff or whatever, or as athletic as some of the athletes I'm shooting today. And so you have to start with whoever you can get, whoever you can recruit, and then you build up. And you build images. Eventually you can recruit bigger name athletes, or you get hired to photograph big time athletes. And so it's progression over time. And so I had kind of made the decision that I wanted to start shooting more athletes, and the look that I had sort of been working on, this 3-edge light techniques that I have now, really lended themselves perfectly in the sports sort of arena of things. And so one of the things that I like to tell people is that to succeed really as a photographer in today and keep current, I try to photograph at least 50 self-assignments a year, somewhere around that. I've even done more than that in a 1-year time period. And that's basically around 1 week. And so I'm out recruiting all the time and getting subjects into my studio or out in the field that I can test my lighting techniques and be able to grow. That's a skill that you're gonna have to learn. If you're gonna get subjects, you gotta learn how to bring them into the studio, and it takes time, and over time you will get better at it and have more material to pitch. So we're gonna talk about this shot of Charles. Well, I was photographing some boxers for the Athens Olympic team, and at that time I was shooting only cross light. And what I did was I added one kicker light, which sometimes you'd call like a hair light, to my one light approach. I added a second light, which was like a big departure for me. And I got this little edge, and I thought that was kind of neat. And I thought, what would happen if I did 2 kicker lights and then put an overhead light? And again, I had this old, or this not old, but a beauty dish that had been sitting, hanging on a hook for 2 years. And that's when I pulled that out, put that as my overhead light with 2 small boxes, and that began the 3-light approach. And it wasn't too long after that that I got a chance to photograph Charles. And so this is an early image with, again, small modifiers as my edge lights, and a small modifier on my overhead. And so with the smaller modifiers, you're going to get a little bit edgier approach. When I say edgier, very defined lines of light. And so what we've decided, what we talked about and we'll be doing later, is softening that edge light up. But this is an early approach, and I see a lot of photographers still in the field are shooting smaller modifiers and producing some beautiful stuff. So this is a good way to start. The other thing that I'll say at this point that I think is really important, that is sort of a little side note on using smaller modifiers, and that is, if you're outdoors and you're shooting with available light as mixing in with your strobe, you can get away with smaller modifiers because you've got a lot of ambient bouncing back into the scene, so it kind of softens the look. And so what I do now is, if I know it's windy outside, and the bigger your modifiers, the harder it is to hold those things down in the field. So I'll say, okay, I'm gonna go with small modifiers, and then I let the ambient light take its course into the image, and it softens it down a little bit, so I can get away with a smaller modifier in the field. But if you're in a studio and you're using your sync at, say, 200th of a second, and it's dark, small modifiers get very, very edgy. So we're gonna take a look, and we're gonna bring an athlete in. We're gonna shoot this really edgy approach and kind of give you a sense of how that's done and what the results we're gonna get. All right, I have James Townsend with me here. I know he looks kind of like me here with my 6-pack, but James, former Chicago Bears football player, and now currently a UFC fighter trainer, and we're really lucky to have him here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you kind of how I started my very first edgy sports portraits. And what I have here is small modifiers. And so if you go back to the basic foundation that we've been working from the very beginning, that is the bigger or the smaller your light source or modifier is in relationship or distance to your subject, the softer or the harsher or the edgier the light. So basically what I have to do is figure out what do I want as an artist to portray in a portrait, and then I work toward it. It's very easy actually once you get that basic foundation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with James, do a really gritty, edgy portrait, and then we're going to add some glycerin, kind of add a little bit of kind of sweat to him, make him look like he's really working out. Cool. So why don't we get started? All right, so we're going to start my lighting first, kind of get it fine-tuned on his face and his body. So what I'm going to do here is sort of get him in position, and I really have to make a decision, and that is to get his hands in the shot or not get his hands in the shot. Obviously, his gloves are probably pretty important to the overall look of what I want to get, showing that he's a fighter. And so right now I'm going to try to crop maybe just below his hands, and I love to crop people's heads, and so I may just on a horizontal just go right across his forehead. And so let's see if we can get that in position here. All right, take a look. All right, so what I'm looking for is where does that edge light fall on his face? That is probably the most important thing, is where does the edge light fall? And so I can either move those modifiers forward or backwards to either bring the edgy where that edge light ends forward or backwards. So if I look at my back of my monitor, I can see that they probably fall just about right. I can maybe, let's say, James, move forward about 2 inches, just a little bit, and that's going to put the edgy lights back just a little bit further. So let's try that. He's also stepped into the main light here, the beauty dish, and so that's going to brighten up. So I might just down the beauty dish just a little bit, knowing that he stepped forward, and we're going to trigger him off here, so clear him out. Here we go again. And so hopefully what that's done is brought, and I can see a little bit of it, it's pretty subtle, but it's brought that edgy light forward a little bit. And I might say on this too that they're maybe a little bit too hot. So Aaron, why don't you help? And we're going to down power these just a little bit. So they're at quarter power, so let's go down about, just do 2 clicks on the adjustment, so toward the 8. It's about a third of a stop. And that should soften that edgy light just a little bit. Let's try that. And that's probably a little bit better. And so now, by increasing this power or decreasing this power, this is going to give me the light down the middle of his face. So looking on here on my monitor, I can see that I could probably come up just a little bit. Let's go back up 2 clicks here. And here we go again. And that's going to fill in his face, his eyes just a little bit. Actually, I think that's about where I want it in terms of my lighting. So let's get the glycerin, and we're going to spray him down. And actually this is glycerin is mixed 50-50, 50% water, 50% the glycerin. You get this at typically at a drugstore, or even some of the main food chains will have it in their food section. And I mix it 50-50, and what this does is this beads up and allows the water to sort of stay in position. If you don't, it dries really fast, especially in a dry, if you're in a dry area. And so we're going to give, and this gets a little messy, and it's really not, it's actually considered a skin treatment, so it's not bad for the skin. So we're going to put a little bit here on the shoulders and the arms. And you don't want to put a lot on. You want to just beat it up. And then I'm going to get your face just a little bit. So usually what I do is I block your eyes here, just get a little bit on the forehead, and then a little bit on the cheeks. Kind of tickles. Again, you don't need much. Don't overdo it. Sometimes I lay a towel down because it gets a little sticky on the floor, but you're good. You go with your eyes and everything. Nothing's in your eyes. Okay. All right. So Now when I take a picture, we'll show you the before and after of what this glycerin looks like, but right there. And so those beads of sweat are gonna just like stand out and really add to the overall look. So I'm gonna zoom in just a little tighter. Okay, right about there. All right, now give me a little more intense look. Okay, about in between that, not quite that much, just right there. Okay. All right. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take and I'm gonna run him sideways a little bit to get his six-pack just to kind of really pop. So I've already got my lights set up and they're coming across. So if I get him positioned just right, he's gonna turn and he's gonna have his stomach just like literally standing out. So let's turn that into the light a little bit. Still stay centered right down the pipe here with this overhead right there. Okay, now give me that intense look a little bit right there in the focus. Right there. A little bit more. Turn your stomach a little bit more. So move your feet. No, keep going that way. And now turn the top of you. Yeah. Now we'll go back a little bit right about there. Yeah, let's see. Now we're talking. So I still want to keep his face sort of coming in the direction of the axis of the lens. So his face still looks lit perfectly, but his body's changed a little bit, give a little more intense look. Let's try that again. Okay. Now just give me just a slight lean toward the camera, just like you're just gonna come at me just a little bit. I'm gonna focus, make sure I'm right on the money here. Okay, right there. Yeah, that looks good. And I got the UFC gloves in there. That looks good. Now I'm gonna pop one and do a vertical, so I have a little more real estate on his legs. All right, so basically what we're going to show you, this is this edgy look. Now, if I decide as I get to this point that it's a little too edgy, I have two choices. I can bring in the lights. As I bring these lights in, they're going to get become softer. So let's do that. We're going to move these lights in about 1.5 feet or so. They're going to increase the power, so I got to account for that. So let's move these lights in. A tad tighter. Now, since I typically knock out my subject from the background, a lot of times when you look at my raw images, you'll see the modifiers in the picture. And the reason why I have grids on here is because it helps minimize the flare that I get in the camera lenses. And typically a zoom lens is going to give you more, or the risk of having flare on a zoom lens is going to be greater than a fixed focal length lens. So when I first started out doing this, I noticed I had these flare issues. And also I noticed that the smaller the modifier, the greater risk of flare. So if you have a big modifier, when I get to where I have these big 7-foot octoboxes behind, I don't have grids for those. You can take flats and flag off the lights, but then you have to have another stand, and it gets in the way. So really, for the cost of getting these grids, it's a pretty good investment, and so that's why I use the grids. They do corral the light a little bit, which actually can be a benefit in certain situations to keep the light maybe from spilling onto the background. But you'll see that these modifiers are going to show up in the scene here, but he's pretty much clear. Hey Aaron, let's move that modifier out about 2 inches because his arm is just in on it, slightly. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to shoot another picture here. And so now you're going to immediately see that the light is softer. Even though I have the same modifiers, the light is softer by probably, it looks like I've just changed the light modifiers and made them a lot bigger. Basically, just bringing them in softens the light. So let me do another one here. And let's make sure the glycerin looks pretty good. I might add a little bit more on the shoulders here. Same thing right there. So he's got enough background around him to cut out, and this actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to take one, and James, I'm going to do this. I'm going to zoom in and just get your face and your shoulders right here, right there. All right, try one. I know the gloves are going to get big, but try one maybe with your hands up. Just see what we get. Yeah. Yeah. Take me out, man. Give me that look. There you go. All right, we can shot quite a few of that. That's how I mix it up. Move the lights in, soften it up, back them up. We'll even get edgier. So before we end, we're going to do one more, and I'm going to pull these lights back even further and show you what it looks like really, really edgy. All right. Okay. They're probably just a little too hot, so let's knock them down about a half stop. Okay. Trigger them off. Here we go. Ready? I would say let's back them up a little bit, a little too far forward. So back this way toward that way. Go as far as you can. That's good. Okay. Let's try it real quick. There you go. Now turn into turn your stomach that direction a little bit more. But move right, you're gonna be dead center, right there. Ready? Here we go. Yeah. Stare me down. Okay. And do one with your gloves up, so we have it, with the stomach like that. All right. Okay, so that's how I do my very edgy sports portrait, and I would encourage you guys to take these small modifiers and do the same kind of look yourself.
Special thanks to FJ Westcott for keeping this episode lit up. Like the music? Special thanks to Triple Scoop Music. Frame Network giveaways are brought to you by B&H. Head to giveaways.framenetwork.com for your chance to win. Find out more about the equipment used in this episode on framenetwork.com.